at one point in time vaguely looked worth it. But Taco has joined Team Liquid. Steel has been removed from Team Liquid. And let's start with this. So as usual, we're going to run down the team removing a player, and then we're going to talk about adding a player. We're going to talk about, was it the right move in both senses? What do they need? And these are not always the same things. There's not always overlap, quite frankly, which is why I break it down in that system. So in terms of Steel stepping down, now first and foremost, apparently, based on what Zeus says, that is somewhat accurate. And why I say somewhat accurate, okay, on the surface, it's entirely accurate that Steel has stepped down from Team Liquid. He has left Team Liquid. Taco is stepping up to Team Liquid. He is joining Team Liquid. Okay, that part is certainly factually accurate. Whether or not it was his choice and whether or not he was the one who pulled the trigger or suggested the move, that's where I have my questions. And that's where whether or not he stepped down, it gets a bit murky for me. Because in Zeus's statement, he said that actually, you know, Steel had felt like it wasn't working out for him, or he didn't like it the way it was going in Team Liquid. And then crucially, he said that like Taco's availability like sort of helped him make the decision or made the decision for him. Like that's where it gets a bit suspicious for me, because that's more like, to me, okay, so Steel, remember, was in this situation where there only used to be two good Brazilian teams. There was SK Gaming, which he's obviously not going to get into, and there was Immortals, which he was in and actually had played pretty well in, actually. And I think was one of the reasons, a low-key reason, admittedly, as to why the Immortals team actually got pretty decent and had that nice major run. Because I actually thought he pulled his weight pretty admirably. And so, when you look at this equation, when he got to go to Team Liquid, that was about the best case scenario for him, because the Immortals team had completely fallen apart in the wake of KNG getting fired, and then them going to them having the Twins leave, so then they would have to rebuild. They couldn't get good players. They tried to buy Team 1 players, tried to talk about Luminosity players. They couldn't get these players. So Immortals was just done. There was no point anymore. And obviously, the other players anyway went off and made the 100 Thieves lineup, which obviously never got to play a game, but we thought was going to play at the major and go on, but has actually just been dropped in, has now become this now Takemo, or whatever the fuck it's called, NTC lineup that is obviously FNX's brand. So here's the thing. When all that was going on is when Steel went over to join Team Liquid. So at the time, joining Team Liquid was pretty much the best case scenario for Steel. I mean, he's joining a team that's got some talent, some up-and-coming players. They're looking for someone who can sort of do some of the dirty work, do some sort of the hard, I won't say heavy lifting, because I often think of heavy lifting in terms of frags, but heavy lifting in terms of like having to play a difficult role and having to do the things that other people don't want to, so they can just do the easy things like just frag, which admittedly is 90% of the fucking game. But okay, this seemed like a best case scenario for him. So in that setting, unless he played really well and got an offer to go to SK or go to, if Cloud9 had been better, go and upgrade to Cloud9 when they're major champions, I can't really see, or go and play in FaZe, I can't really see how there would be any better scenario if you're Steel than playing in Team Liquid. But with that said, I do think he was the odd man out, and we'll get into that. Now, with all of that said, if he himself felt like the odd man out, like I do think he played pretty poorly in the team and he didn't really seem to fit sort of the role they wanted from him. He did it like okay because no one else in the team could sort of play a supportive role, but a lot of why they won was just mad fragging by the good players, and I did think they had some issues in terms of being shored up, which is why I actually thought, even though their placings are really nice, they were a very inconsistent team. They could smash a team on one map and then play a worse team on the same map, in terms of skill on the map and overall level, and lose big themselves or lose by like not a very good margin. They weren't like a team that you knew you'd put up 12 plus rounds every map no matter what. They weren't one of those sorts of consistency teams. And so with the level of firepower they have and the number of players going off and some of the stats, that suggests to me that it was more the in-game leader and the support element of the team that wasn't shored up there to make that fragging more effective and turn into more wins. So with that said, if he felt, you know, this culturally, obviously, I'm not American like these guys. I'm not really even fitting into the mix here. They're doing well. They're having good tournaments. They're loving how things are going. But personally, I don't really feel like I've got a good role for myself. I'm not playing well myself. I'm in a bad situation. I'm a bit isolated culturally, perhaps, because it's not that these are bad guys. Actually, Team Liquid, a lot of cool guys, but a lot of very quiet guys, actually. A lot of, I mean, on some level, I won't say passive-aggressive because they're not really like that as much now, although they did get Naff in the team, obviously. But they're just quieter guys. They're not really a team that has that like culture within. Like they don't have like a great like camaraderie and friendship and stuff. That's why they can be a bit distant, and why when all the business moves go on above them with Zeus and Steve Arneset, the owner, yeah, it does sometimes look more like an assembled team, almost like how you create and manufacture a boy band, as opposed to a band naturally coming together and a couple of guys saying, hey, yeah, we want to make a team or a band together. Oh, and we get this other guy, and then you work your way up together. It was less like that feel, and has been more of a company, a job vibe. So if he wasn't enjoying his job, okay, I get it. But in that scenario, up until recently, it doesn't make sense that you would then say, oh, well, I mean, even though professional Counter-Strike player is my job, I'll leave a team where I almost certainly get a good salary, and I'm in a team that's actually doing well, and I have a chance to succeed at tournaments. By the way, Team Liquid now is over the last few months is much better than Immortals has ever been in terms of actual tournament performances and run of form and chances to win. But with all that said, there have been some recent things that have happened that make it plausible. So obviously, as I said, you had the NTC scenario where they've gotten some good players in there and they potentially are going to go and make a team. Henny and Lucas 1 aren't part of that team. I guess I should say Henny and Lucas because you don't say Hen 1, do you? So Henny and Lucas, they've gone off, presumably, assuming they're going to keep playing, they might make a team. So you've now got two legit Brazilian options, which if you add Steel to the mix, already starts to get a decent base of talent. I mean, Henny and Lucas, I would say it's going to be a pretty streaky team, but it could be a decent enough team with Steel, and then you get in a couple of young guys. You could go somewhere. That's a big gamble. But then again, you could also potentially play for a big org. Someone might be willing to take a shot at that, whereas the people want to invest in KNG. I don't know many org owners that do, but if you go to NTC and they can get the sponsorship or they can send you to events, I don't know what the brand's like. Well, yeah, you know what? They've got players where FNX, veteran talent, Bit, old school leader, could probably run a team, so Steel doesn't have to do that. You've obviously got Phelps, who's the best talent in Brazil outside of SK right now. This is starting to look like a pretty decent team. So that team's already kind of got forget potential. It's kind of got qualities now. It's got some, I would say, guaranteed ability. Like I think it would already be able to compete immediately. It's got some proven pieces, veterans, talents. So suddenly there's options opening up that are Brazilian options. This is the key thing, because now you can go and you can compete with your people from your culture. You can compete with people you know in the past, compete with people who are proven talents, but also have all these qualities with them. So that's why in a world where maybe Steel wants to switch it up, pivot and go to one of these teams, the Henny and Lucas team or the NTC team. Okay, now I could see why he might be eyeing a way out, because he thinks that'll get me back in form. I'll be on a good team again. Maybe we can be even better than Team Liquid, especially in the NTC one. Who knows? But then he hears, oh, what's that? Taco's available and Team Liquid and Cloud9 are sort of fighting over him. Yeah, you know what? Actually, I haven't been that happy. Accurate. Oh, maybe I should step down and you should release him in fire contract or sell me, and you guys should just get Taco. He can sort of do all the things you want to do. Okay, I could believe that. But there's also a world in which I feel as though him stepping down like that, like I don't think it would have happened necessarily with the exact same level of play if the NTC and the Henny and Lucas move don't happen, or if Taco isn't available and you can't convince him I think you just keep playing and that's your career. Also, I think there might be a world in which you're saying to people, I'm not that happy, and your game's obviously not working, and you're trying to fix it, and then maybe they come to you and they say, we can get Taco, right? And, we would be willing to release you or sell you for a very reasonable buyout and let you go to another team, and then you could find something that's a better fit for you, and maybe he's a better fit for us, and, we've had a good time and great time. I could also believe there's some of that. But anyway, I guess I wasted a lot of time on that, but I've kind of shown you how I broke down the scene there. Now, in terms of him in the team, I do think Steel was the odd man out. Like, he wasn't fragging very well. Then in terms of, being the support or whatever, first of all, there's a lot of burden on his shoulders. They don't really have, a classical IGL in Team Liquid, so I don't think he really delivered in that respect, actually. I did think that's what he was going to do in the team, but I don't know if it was cultural, as in not just literally Brazil and NA, but I mean in terms of team culture, in terms of how they play in Brazil versus in NA, if you look at the style of play. I don't know if there was something there that didn't fit or didn't vibe. I also think, I actually expected them eventually, when it wasn't working initially, to just make the hard switch and make him the in-game leader and say, go back to that. You could do this role with all this talent, especially if you free up Nitro. Hey, you could just be an in-game leader, doesn't even have to frag. But if you can lead the team, we could win tournaments. I thought they'd go that route. Seems as though they haven't, and they're stuck with Nitro, and he's doing this bizarre, AWP sometimes entry in-game leader thing, which is just Nitro to a T, where he's just doing whatever the fuck he wants seemingly all the time, except be a star player. So don't really know what's going on there. But okay, that did just leave it. So it's like, well, what are you doing, Steel? I mean, this is kind of pointless. We are having these great results, and we're maybe a piece away from a championship. Well, you're not working in the team, so you're the obvious piece, right? So, okay, it was the right move for Steel to leave, in my opinion. It was the right move, if he didn't want to leave, by the way, to cut him or to say, or to gently nudge him out the door in order to make room for the piece that might help you win. Now, Taco, formerly of SK, joins the team. Now, first of all, let me just address a similar claim for him, but I won't take 10 minutes to do it. The claim that he stepped down from SK, I'm going to go ahead and call bullshit on that. Again, unless it was like the Steel scenario where they were like, oh, things aren't working out in the team. You know, we're all hungry to win. We've been around together for a long time. Something's not working. Someone needs to step down or go elsewhere, or something's got to change. Okay, I could maybe believe in that scenario. Bearing in mind, he's basically the only person you can cut, by the way, that he sort of like saw the writing on the wall and was like, actually, this isn't a good environment. It's not working. You know what? I'll just essentially preempt being cut in 3 months, and I'll just go now. I'll just say, right, I'm off, I'm out. You guys go ahead and do this. I imagine you could definitely, bearing in mind SK wants him out, make a really reasonable buyout if you're a Team Liquid or a Cloud9, because there's only a few months left on their contract, seemingly. They're in a situation where SK wants rid of him anyway, whereas you've just signed Bolt, or you've done some sort of deal with Immortals, which means that getting rid of a player you've just signed already is a bit harsh. And then contractually, it's a fucking nightmare. And you don't want to spend a lot of money getting other players, or feel like you wasted money on Bolts when you might want to see if you can rehabilitate him, especially if you put him in a Taco role. So, okay, let's forget all that though. The idea that Taco had a choice between Team Liquid and Cloud9, I can definitely see why he picked Team Liquid. I think most people behind the scenes now have finally come around to where I was at when Team Liquid won the major, Cloud9 won the major, which, Freudian slip there, Cloud9 won the major, which is, Cloud9 winning the major was a one-off. It had some good fortune, both on their half, and some very good playing decisions, and definitely on their opponent's behalf. Then you've got the scenario where Team Liquid, while Cloud9 has not only come back to earth, but actually had some real struggles, worse than it had ever been. Meanwhile, Team Liquid has had this rise, and they've had all this potential and really great upsets and big wins and beaten SK a bunch of times. By the way, so has Cloud9, and had these great performances and gotten NAF, and they look right now like a team where, as I say, they're one piece away from championships. So I could definitely see why Taco would pick this team, especially because I get the sense that from his time in SK and from getting so many great accomplishments and having so much success, he wants to win now. He doesn't want to build a project up, whereas Cloud9, after Stewie leaves, is a rebuilding project. That's a team that needs to reformulate. They need to go a different approach. They need to even change it up, because obviously without Stewie, who is the talismanic, somewhat identity player of the team, I think they need to go a different approach. So, first of all, Taco doesn't replace a Stewie 2K, and you'd have to go and start all over. Meanwhile, in Team Liquid, you're coming into a team where, if anything, they need a player like you. They've already got all the talent they need, and it's good right now. You don't have to wait 3 months to develop. So there's more clear potential in Team Liquid. Cloud9 looks a bit capped at the moment. Team Liquid still has a bit more potential, but they're already very good as well. Now, was it the right move to get Taco? Because obviously it was the right move for Taco in that sense. Right? If I had to identify what they needed, I still feel as though a good in-game leader should be number one on the to-do list, but obviously FNS was available. Is he good in the sense I mean, though? Maybe I mean very good in-game leader should be the number one priority. Okay, is he a very good in-game leader? I don't know about that, actually. I'd just say he's a good in-game leader for now. So, in light of the fact that you have been running a system that's been working well enough, you've got a pretty decent map pool, good placings, good upsets, good performance against a variety of the top European teams. Yeah, I would say after very good in-game leader, before good in-game leader would be some sort of top support player, or someone with the experience and the mentality to want to play a supportive role, to buttress all these talents, to enable, to facilitate all these talents, to find a way to be the linking connective tissue between a Twist, a NAF, and a Liege, all of whom in their own context, and if you go back like 2 years, 3 years, Nitro, all in their own context should be a number one or number two, a 1 or 1A, 1B type first option or first or second star option for a team, and therefore 2 or 3 of them are going to be in a scenario where they're not the main option, and you're having to juggle that, and then one of them is the in-game leader, but not really an experienced in-game leader, so you see the issues? You need that sort of person. So in that sense, I do think it's the right move. I know Taco's basically the worst point in his career at the moment, but he's definitely done a lot, and also that team had a lot more problems than just Taco, by the way. He wasn't the biggest problem even in SK. So I don't think it's fair to look at his poor play at the end and say that, like, you know, that's definitely going to be the case in Team Liquid. If anything, I would expect him to have something of a revival of form. Now, in terms of his role, this is what's interesting, because we know traditionally, in terms of the way he's talked in interviews and what the role he played in SK, he was a supportive player, and he was a supportive player who was dedicated it in the sense that Xyp9x is in Astralis, in the sense that Apex is as an entry fragger in all of his teams. So that's great, because Team Liquid, I think, did desperately need this sort of player. But what's interesting about this move, in my opinion, is that it will not only show us if we're overrating the potential of some of those Team Liquid players to be as good as they are now, or with more consistency, or slightly better, but more importantly, I think it's going to show us a lot about Taco. Now, I will immediately put an asterisk. It's not the same as if he joined another Brazilian team, or if an NA player joined Team Liquid, because it is different culturally. It's a team with a totally different background of Counter-Strike culture as well, and a setup of players he has never played with before. So I don't treat it the same way as if a Swedish player joins a Swedish team, French player joins a French team. There is a slight get out of jail free card for a Taco here, as I gave to Steel earlier on. But I will say a lot of the praise Taco got in SK will be tempered when people look back in history by what he does in Team Liquid now. Because look at what Team Liquid has. This is a team where they've got enough firepower already to win championships. I mean, in light of a world in which Gambit and fucking Cloud9 lineups can win majors, they've got enough talent right now to win majors. I think this is a more talented lineup right now than Gambit or Cloud9 was when they won the major. Even though actually, when they came to win the major, I thought that actually Gambit had a pretty good 1-2 punch, and Cloud9 had a pretty decent spread of talent, although they actually lacked the superstar player for me. So I think right now, you look at NAF, you look at Elise, you look at Twists, they've got enough firepower already in terms of stars to win a major, to win championships. So what do they need? Well, as I said, either a very good in-game leader, or they need some sort of supportive role. So presumably in this team, he can play a bit of entry, as he did on certain maps in SK. He can play support. I don't know if he'll play support in the sense he did in SK, where sometimes he almost seemed like a dedicated support to coldzera, and it's almost like coldzera was the AD carry, and he was the support player in the League of Legends sense of the term. I don't know that he's going to do that necessarily. It would be exciting if he could with an Elise or something like that. But I think more general support for the team, and with all these talents, working to facilitate all these talents. But this is where we're going to get to see not only what he did in SK and if that can be transplanted, but maybe he can be an even more focal point of support in that sense by making multiple players work and helping people out depending on the map. That would be very interesting. I do think that you will also see what he is made of in his character, because obviously this Team Liquid doesn't choke like the other teams did or fail to execute it under pressure, which I would say is a differentiation of their biggest problem. But I do think they're a team that doesn't have as much consistency map to map, opponent to opponent. Like I said before, they don't have a hard level of play that you know they're always going to be at. And at the moment, I do think they live and die by the fact they've got these three young stars who just go ham, but it seemingly is like one out of the three is guaranteed to go off, and then it depends which of the other two turns up to join him. So what I think in this scenario is, I want to see if he not only is going to be clutch himself in Team Liquid, good under pressure, but if he's going to bring some of that to the team. Because it's actually not as simple as saying this was a very clutch team. So SK, one of the most clutch teams of all time, one of the most clutch cores of all time, maybe the most ever in Counter-Strike. When you look at that core, I've always thought that the clutch element comes, first of all, from having a couple of players who are clutch. And then I feel as though that bleeds out into the rest of the team. The fact that other players who might not actually naturally have the same characteristics then are in scenarios again and again where they win because they have these great players, they start to feel more confident. They start to feel like, hey, I have a sense that I've been here before, I've won before, I'm not concerned, I don't have anxiety issues. So they start to perform a little bit over what the level you'd expect. And suddenly the whole team looks iron-proof, bulletproof, like the ironclad, bulletproof, like they can't be beaten, like they're just amazing in the clutch, and everyone believes it can happen. But when you put those players in other teams, if the team environment is different, and that is not the case, and if you have a vacuum of clutch ability, I would say a good example is like the current phase. So historically, you look at someone like Olaf Meister, what an amazing clutch star player when he was in Fnatic. You look at someone like Nico and Mouse won many clutches, although he wasn't as good deep in tournaments. The team was dog shit, though. He never should have been there. You look at Rain. He's been a pretty clutch player in his career. Now you go over to the other side of the equation, add them all together and put them in phase. They're a team that's having all these problems. They're a team where none of them really, generally, aside from Guardian, step up with consistency. They're a team where everyone's had 3 months that weren't as good, or had the tournament where they've fallen off, or had the finals where they've had issues. So when he goes to Team Liquid, will Taco still be the clutch, good under pressure, able to perform above the expectation levels that you see from his stats player that he was in SK? That's very questionable. Although if I had to guess right now, I'm leaning towards some of it carrying over. I don't think as much will, because I look at SK and I think coldzera, Fallen, these are the really clutch players to me. But I think some of it will come over. I think some of it can be transplanted, and kind of like planting seeds can grow in Team Liquid a little bit. And that would obviously be very helpful for them. I do still think Team Liquid is pretty questionable in terms of in-game leader. But with as much talent as they have now, you don't need to have the tactical style that they had when they had Stanislaw. By the way, when Stanislaw was in the team, rather, and they had that run of finals and Nitro was the in-game leader, I think you can play a bit looser and play off your talent like it looks as though they are doing now. And with Taco, here's what's crucial. Taco, could, to some degree, can be a general in the game, not as an in-game leader, but to help enforce Zeus's vision. And he can now be someone who helps Zeus work through the system, through the game, and bring some of what he wants to do in the game. And we know from how SK Luminosity played when Zeus was there, they favour a little bit of a looser style than a pure tactical style that you think of in the past with Fallen's teams and the Na'Vi teams and Astralis, etc. So I do think that's interesting. I also think Taco could play a secondary calling role. I mean, he's someone who knows some things about the game and has definitely been in a lot of scenarios. So not in terms of calling a tactic as much as being able to make reads in the game and make a call, or to help someone out by saying, hey, you go first here and I'll follow up. That's where I could see him adding something. Now, what's exciting about this is Team Liquid already has quite a cheeky little map pool, where I think what's interesting about them is I don't think that they have a bunch of amazing maps and then a big drop off and then bad maps. What's very interesting about this team is they have an amazing map, then some pretty good maps, and then like a decent map, and then some maps they just can't play. So what's weird is they have a strength, some really bad weaknesses, and then a really nice middle ground that isn't just a middle ground. It's a middle between those 2 points, but it's actually on the upper end. Like some of these maps are what for other people would be like a second or third best map, like legit, like these are our best maps. But for this Team Liquid team, I think they have another level they can go to. So on Inferno, they're really good, and obviously everyone plays that right now. That's a really good sign for you. Then you look at the maps elsewhere in the map pool, and because they're pretty good on Mirage, Cobble, and Train, they're in a scenario where people have to ban Cobble because not as many people play Cobble. So as a result, they're going to get their Mirage and Train fairly often. Now, they haven't had to play Train as much recently. I definitely think that's a team they can work on and be good at. Mirage, obviously, always been a map they've played, always been a map they've been good at. Cobble, generally always been a pretty good map for them, although they didn't play it as much in the last lineup with Stanislaw. Then you look, Overpass, and they started to introduce, they've gotten actually cheekily good on that one, and then they just don't play, and they're not good on Cash and Nuke. So that's a problem, because people can pick that against you, but who the fuck picks Cash and Nuke at the moment? Exactly. So that's not really a problem. They're the two least played maps in the pool. So the map pool, in the context of the teams they're going to play and the general scene, is great for Team Liquid. And then you think about adding Taco. If he's really going to add consistency, surely going to do more than steal. He's going to shore up some aspect of the team, maybe add a little bit of secondary calling. And then you look at the maps that they have that are good, that they would like to get 1 or 2 to a higher level. He can help you on all of them. Mirage. Taco has always been able to play that map. That is a map we think of him playing with SK, with Luminosity. Cobblestone, at the end, that was one of the only maps SK had left. They always retained Cobblestone. It just always was a sleeper, and it only was forced to the top of their map pool when everything else, when the arse fell out of the map pool with Overpass and Train disappearing. Then you look at Train. Obviously, he's been in lineups that have been, well, the one with FNX was the best lineup probably ever on Train, right? They were unbelievable. He could help them out there. That's already a map where that's like that far away from being really good for Team Liquid. Overpass, they've been good on, but I feel as though they don't have comfort on it. He can bring that. That's a map where he entries sometimes in SK. That's a map where obviously they had an amazing CT side. Again, these are maps where already he comes ready-made. They're already amazing on Inferno. They don't need him to do anything then. He wasn't the biggest problem on Inferno, even though that, because it was the map they lost on so often, is where, since he was also having generally bad performances compared to what's normal, that's where people would say he was shit on that map. Yeah, not specifically on that map. He was just having bad play in general. The problems on that map obviously were on the B side. Now, Cash and Nuke, funnily enough, SK doesn't really want to play those maps anyway. They don't play Nuke ever, so no problem there. Doesn't have to learn that map. And then Cash, right, they were always decent to good on it. Obviously, it's a map famously they started to ban in the FNX lineup, but it's not as though he needs to do much on it here, and they're not really going to be playing that when they've got these 5 other maps, including the most played maps, available to them. So I think there's real potential for this to be a cheeky little upgrade. Like, you just bring him in, he brings a bit of clutch ability, facilitates a bit. If he can just do that and shore up one map, Team Liquid already, in my opinion, will become like top 3 team in the world. If he can go, well, I actually don't know where they are in the rankings right now, maybe top 2, top 3. Beyond that, then I think that if he adds some clutch factor and he can actually really facilitate people, they could become the best team in the world. Right now with FaZe, with no exist, SK's in disarray. We don't know what's happening with them with Stewie 2K. Fnatic's good, but I feel as though actually they peaked somewhat, and I think they haven't really won 2 tournaments. One of them wasn't really that legit a tournament with WESGs. They really won one big tournament to me. Astralis is coming, but even they've leveled off online, even though they did have that insane streak. The scene is wide open right now for a Team Liquid to at least be a placeholder no more. And you've got Mouse Sports, obviously very good right now. I think that's the team you're battling with. Funnily enough, they have great map pools to go against each other on. Really nice matchup in that sense. I think this is the perfect time to make a move like this. It's a good move for everyone. It's the right move for Steel. It's the right move to remove Steel. It's the right move for Taco to join. It's the right move to add Taco. Everything makes sense. It's one of the few like slam dunk moves I can think of in recent history where there doesn't really like there's that much sort of gamble there. But if it doesn't work out, this will have some consequence on how we think of Taco back in SK, how we kind of chop up the credit and the reward there for their championships. Now, listen, that can be unfair. It might be a totally different environment, but that's just the way things are. So I think overall, good move for everyone. Esports Pools Fantasy Contest for DreamHack Marseille is open right now. Check it out. This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Twch, Sanity, Gman, Kokupsi, Andreas Westerlund, Alex Adams, Mikkel Hansen, Jerky's Minion, Anthony, Bash, Daniel Yordanov, Yordan Tsenkov, VeXii, Kevin Haupt, Jason A, and Travis G. Greb. Want to suggest a guest to appear on my show or a topic to discuss? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question. In 2018, for the first time in history, you can directly influence and support my content with the Patreon link below. Unlock the code to the streets and join the Scrilluminati today.